the mask, the whip. That razor-sharp Z slashed into walls. But here's the real question. What if I told you Zorro nearly didn't survive his own success? Not on screen, but behind the scenes. And what if the man behind the mask risked his life, his career, and even his identity to make television something it had never been before? This isn't nostalgia. This is the untold story of how Zorro fought networks, censorship, heat, real blades, and history itself. Zorro was never supposed to exist. Did you know Walt Disney didn't even want to make Zorro at first? In the late 1950s, Hollywood saw television as the enemy. Cheap, disposable, and beneath serious filmmakers. But Disneyland was bleeding money, and Disney needed fast, reliable income. His solution? A desperate deal with ABC. One weekly adventure show. The pitch sounded simple, a masked swordsman in old California. The reality? Disney demanded total creative control. No sponsor interference. No network notes. ABC agreed because it had no leverage. Here's the irony. ABC thought they were buying cheap TV. Disney secretly poured movie-level budgets into sets, costumes, and fight choreography. Within weeks, Zorro became ABC's highest-rated show. So ask yourself, how often does a financial gamble end up rewriting an entire industry? The accidental star who became a legend. Guy Williams was never meant to be Zorro. The role was first offered to a bigger, better-known actor, someone Hollywood expected to say yes. He didn't. No one remembers his name now. Williams, a former model and trained fencer, walked into the audition and disarmed the stunt coordinator in seconds. Disney made the decision instantly. No screen test. No callbacks. One handshake changed television history. And yet, Williams didn't act like a star. He did nearly all his own stunts, not for ego, but because the show couldn't afford a full-time double. Would you jump from a second-story balcony onto a moving horse with no safety rig? Williams did. Missed the first take. Slammed into the dirt. Got up and said, "Let's go again." That danger. You can feel it in every duel. Real swords, real pain, real risk. Here's something modern audiences rarely consider. Those sword fights weren't fully choreographed. Williams was trained. Many villains weren't. And that single fact changed everything. In today's world of carefully choreographed action, it's easy to forget how dangerous early television really was. There were no digital touch-ups, no green screens, no second chances built in by visual effects teams. When Guy Williams stepped onto the Zorro set, he wasn't just acting brave, he had to be brave. Most of the guest actors swinging swords at him had minimal training. Some had none at all. They learned just enough to survive the scene. That meant near misses that were truly near, blades that came a fraction too close, and moments where instinct, not choreography, decided whether someone walked away unscathed. In one episode, a sword flashes past Williams' face, missing him by inches. If you look closely, you can see it, the brief widening of his eyes, the split second where reality intrudes. But he never breaks character. He adjusts, counters, and finishes the scene as if it were all planned. That moment wasn't acting. That was survival. Why does that matter? Because it's why Zorro still feels electric today. The danger wasn't simulated, it was real. Every clash of steel carried genuine risk. Every leap from a balcony or gallop through the night came with the possibility of failure, injury, or worse. Audiences may not have consciously known it, but they felt it. Authenticity has a way of reaching people even when they can't explain why. And then there was the whip. That iconic opening shot, the crack of leather carving a perfect Z into the air, has been parodied, recreated, and referenced for decades. But here's the truth. There were no special effects. No editing tricks. No safety net. Williams trained for weeks with a real bullwhip. Not a prop. Not a softened version. A real whip capable of breaking skin and bones. He was struck again and again. Arms. Back. Shoulder. Even the neck. One miscalculation could have taken out an eye. One slip could have ended his career. He practiced until his hands blistered and his muscles memorized the motion. And when the cameras rolled, he nailed it in a single take. Disney knew something fundamental then, something we've nearly forgotten now. Some things can't be faked. The costume that nearly killed him. Now imagine this. California summers. Temperatures climbing past 100 degrees. Long shooting days under blazing sun and studio lights that only made the heat worse. And Guy Williams wore a full black wool costume. Not breathable fabric. Not lightweight material. Wool. Leather gloves. A cape. Boots. A mask that trapped heat against his face. No ventilation. No cooling system. Minimal breaks. He sweated through pounds of water every day. He dropped weight rapidly. Crew members began stationing themselves nearby, ready with towels and water bottles between takes. They'd rush him fluids the moment the director called cut. Williams never complained. Raised during the Great Depression, he carried a quiet belief that work was something you endured, not something you negotiated. You showed up. You gave everything. And you didn't ask for sympathy. Until one day, mid-scene, his body finally rebelled. Without warning, he collapsed. Unconscious. Heat exhaustion. The set fell silent. Paramedics were called. Doctors were firm. He needed rest. Real rest. Time away. 3 days later, Williams was back on set. No press release. No drama. Just a quiet return to work. Disney, however, noticed. And without fanfare, changes were made. More night shoots. Lighter fabric where possible. Large fans positioned just out of frame. Williams never mentioned the incident publicly. Today, we might call that environment unsafe. And we'd be right. But it raises a question worth asking. Would television have become what it is today without people willing to push themselves to that edge? Or was that the cost of proving that the small screen could carry the same weight as cinema? The romance Disney wouldn't allow. There's another choice that still sparks debate. The writers once proposed a long-term romantic arc. Not a disposable love interest, but a woman intelligent enough to challenge Don Diego, sharp enough to suspect the truth behind the mask. Someone who could force Zorro to confront what he sacrificed. Walt Disney shut it down. His reasoning was simple and ruthless. Zorro had to remain alone. Romance, he believed, would dilute the mission. Adventure mattered more than domestic happiness. The hero's focus had to remain outward, on injustice, corruption, and the people who couldn't fight back. At the time, it felt cold. Limiting. Years later, Guy Williams admitted something surprising. The loneliness gave Zorro depth. Don Diego could flirt, joke, and blend into society, but Zorro could never belong to it. The mask wasn't just a disguise. It was a barrier. The cause became the relationship. The mission replaced intimacy. And that quiet sacrifice resonated, especially with older viewers who understood, perhaps painfully well, that duty often demands a personal cost. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought with swords. The episode Disney buried. One episode nearly destroyed the series. It told the story of a corrupt priest abusing his authority. Not a masked villain. Not a caricature. A respected figure using power for personal gain. Before it aired, protests erupted. Religious groups objected. ABC panicked. Disney made the call. Pull the episode. Lock it away. For over 30 years, it remained unseen. When it finally surfaced in the 1990s, audiences were shocked, not by its offensiveness, but by its restraint. The episode was thoughtful, nuanced, adult. It didn't attack faith. It examined power. Which raises an uncomfortable question. How many meaningful stories never reached us because they challenged the comfort of their time? Cancelled at its peak. Zorro didn't fade out. It was cut off at full strength. ABC wanted more control. Disney refused. Meetings grew tense. Voices were raised. Finally, the network issued an ultimatum. Disney walked away. 78 episodes. That was it. Guy Williams learned the news from a reporter. Disney's reasoning was blunt and unforgettable. I'd rather end it strong than watch it die slowly. And because of that decision, Zorro never declined. Never became self-parody. Never overstayed its welcome. Isn't that why it still feels timeless? A legacy that followed the man. Guy Williams tried to escape Zorro. He took new roles. moved countries, changed genres. But the mask followed him everywhere. Then he moved to Argentina, and something unexpected happened. There, Zorro wasn't remembered. He was revered. People didn't thank Williams for entertainment. They thanked him for hope. For showing that one person, flawed, imperfect, but determined, could stand against corruption. He stopped running from the role. When he died in 1989, his Zorro costume still hung in his closet. Today, there's a statue of Zorro in Buenos Aires. Paid for by fans. Not Hollywood. Not Disney. Just people. So ask yourself, how many actors become so inseparable from a hero that an entire country claims them as their own? Why Zorro still matters. Before Zorro, television was disposable. After Zorro, it was cinematic. Higher standards. Serious themes. Real danger. Moral weight. Every prestige series today traces part of its DNA back to a masked swordsman and a creator who refused to compromise. So the next time you hear that guitar riff, ask yourself, was Zorro just a show? Or was it the moment television finally grew up? Because sometimes, a hero doesn't just fight villains. Sometimes, he changes history.